Hey guys, welcome to another time where I attempt to solve an Agatha Christie mystery. Today we are going to be trying to solve Ordeal by Innocence. So if you have watched my previous video last month, first of all I have to apologize. There is a grader going on, clearing snow. It's annoying, but if I don't film this now, I'm not going to. Anyway, last month I filmed me trying to solve the Peril at End Point by Agatha Christie, and I had a lot of fun with that. It's been a while since I had read an Agatha Christie, and so it reminded me how much I love her books. And so many of you had fun watching me attempt to solve it, so I wanted to do it again. This particular Agatha Christie does not have one of her detectives, so I don't know how we're solving it, who's solving it. Often how her books are laid out is you get all the clues, all the suspects, and then the last couple chapters she brings all the suspects together and goes through why it could have been any of them and then says who it is. So I'm going to read the back here because I don't know anything about this one, but I do know because of this handy dandy list that this is one of Agatha Christie's favorite mysteries. There is a list of about 10-ish on here, and this is one of them. So the back says, according to the courts, Jacko Argyle bludgeoned his mother to death with a poker. The sentence was life imprisonment, but when Dr. Arthur Calgary arrives with the proof that confirms Jacko's innocence, it is too late. Jacko died behind bars following a bout of pneumonia. Worse still, the doctor's revelations reopen old wounds in the family, increasing the likelihood that the real murderer will strike again. Okay, so we've got a murder, someone convicted and dead, but the real murderer out there. Interesting. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to read the first couple chapters, and on paper or sticky notes or whatever I can find, I'm going to write all the different suspects, the different things we know about the murderer, and not even just all the suspects. Honestly, I'm going to write every single character, every single one. So I don't, so I learned from my mistakes previously. And I'm going to kind of share with you guys the information I'm learning. If you want to read along with me, that would be fun too. So I think what I'll do every time I share an update, I will share what chapter I'm on, so I don't give you spoilers. And then at the end, I'm going to share the results. So either have read this book by then, or I guess I'll spoil it for you, and that wouldn't be very fun. So actually what I'll do is I will put up a thing on my community tab and let people know if they want to read it ahead of time. That's brilliant. I'm going to do that. Okay, so I am going to try to not let things slip by me. I don't know what else I need to say here in the intro. I'm going to read a few chapters. This is going to take me a few days because I've got to read, write a bunch, come back. So over the next few days, hopefully I will figure out my very first Agatha Christie. No, you know what? Here's the thing, guys. Honestly, I like not figuring it out. I like that the clues and the information is there and I can figure it out, but I honestly have more fun when I don't figure out mysteries. The few times I have in other books, it's probably brought it down like a star. So as much as like I want to be smart enough to figure it out, I also don't want to figure it out so that it's a better book. So either way, I feel like I win. Either I'm smart or it's a good book. So I will start reading. Okay, so I have done a little bit of reading and want to report. Okay, I've only read the first 2 chapters, but like so much happens at the beginning of Agatha Christie books. You get kind of like the murder, you get the suspects. So I have a bit of an idea of what's going on so far. I'll explain all the different people that we've met so far, and then go from there. Okay, so the book starts out with us following a guy named Arthur Calgary, Dr. Arthur Calgary. He is going to the house of the Argyles, and he explains to them that, how did they word this? November 9th, the year before last, what happened is their son, Jack, had an argument with his mom. He wanted more money. They knew he's always been kind of a bit of a sleazy character, but like also with charm. And then later that evening, after he argued with his mom, she ended up found murdered, And later than that evening, Jack is arrested. He has the money. He's blamed for his mom's murder. But he says, actually, apparently she died between 7 and 7:30. And he says he was actually in a person's vehicle. He was hitchhiking. He was in a person's vehicle from 7 till 7:30, like a little bit before and a little bit after. But like during that window, so he couldn't have done it. But they were searching for this guy. He didn't get the name. He didn't get the car. And they never found him. And Dr. Arthur Calgary is coming to say that he is actually the man. The reason he didn't come forward is because later that evening, after he had dropped Jack off wherever, at the pub or wherever he was dropping him off, he was walking across the street and got hit by a lorry and ended up getting like a concussion and losing like a bit of that day in his memory. And then after he spent a little bit of time recovering, he went to the Arctic. The Antarctic. He is a geophysicist. And so he's been out of the country for the last 2 years. And it wasn't until he came back into the country, he was packing some specimens, I think with some newspaper. And as he was wrapping, or he got some like old newspapers, saw Jack's picture, and then like the memory came back. And he realized that he had an alibi for Jack. The big thing here is, actually, Jack died 6 months into his jail time. So he just wants to help the family and let them know that their son is not guilty. Which, I mean, I commend, but at the same time, now they're still missing a murderer. So other people that we have been introduced to, when, what's his name, Arthur comes into the house, he first meets Hester, who is Jack's sister. She has black hair, blue eyes, young. That's what I have written down. And then he meets Leo, who is Jack's dad, and he described him as like pretty much transparent and a wraith of a man, but yet still happy in a retreat of his own. So there's that. And then two other ladies that are living in their house. There's Kirsty Lindstrom, who is described as having a Scottish name and a faint foreign intonation. According to her, she came out 18 years ago to help Mrs. Argyle with like war orphans or something like that, and has stayed this entire time. I was a little bit confused at the beginning of the book. I think she was maybe described as like previously being a nun or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And then we have Gwenda Vaughn, who is around 37 or 38. According to the description, she is a well-rounded figure with dark hair and eyes. And I'm not sure of her role in the house, why she's there. Pretty much the family was not very impressed with Arthur's announcement and wishes he would have just left them alone. And as he's kind of leaving, he sees Gwenda kind of trying to comfort Leo. So maybe there's something going on there, but that would obviously be a bit of an age difference, but it happens. So yeah, I don't know if all of these people are suspects yet, or we're going from there. Like, obviously I've just read that much, but it seems like a decent lineup so far. I'm gonna get out my masking tape and tape all this information up on the wall here shortly. And then I will probably read a little bit, like, well, I hope so. I hope to read a bit of a bigger section next and then update some more thoughts. So far, I don't have any reason like why people would want to get rid of this Rachel, other than the one thing that sticks out so far. If Gwenda is maybe comforting Leo, maybe one of them did her in because they, I don't know, or like it's a love interest thing. But if she's already been dead for 2 years, it's weird that nothing has happened yet. So yeah, that's kind of that's what I've learned, some thoughts I have so far, and we'll see where this goes. Okay, so I continued reading, and I was going to tell you how far I was, but my book is buried under a million sticky notes, and I'm shaking the camera. Okay, so I have finished chapter 6, have not read chapter 7. That far through the book, I was going to put my sticky notes up, and then I realized I had quite a bit to add to the ones that I already had, just kind of like learned a little bit more about more of the characters. So we're gonna go through them here. I am going to make kind of like a suspects wall, but apart from the suspects wall, I think two characters that we have that are not suspects. One of them is Arthur Calgary. I mean, it's Agatha Christie, so I feel like everyone should be a suspect. But he was unknown to the family. He is the one that drove Jack during the alibi. So if that gives Jack an alibi, I'm pretty sure that also gives Arthur Calgary an alibi, but like, I feel like I can't rule anything out. The other person that I think is ruled out is Mr. Marshall. He is the lawyer. So he is the one that Arthur contacted to originally get in touch with the family. Now, the people that I left off with last time are kind of like the people of the house, the people that live there full time, but they do have other kids. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about those kids, then we'll talk about the night of the actual murder and who was there. So we talked about Leo, that's the dad. We talked about Kirsty Lindstrom. What is she? She's like some kind of nurse or something. I think she was educated as a Danish nurse, and she came out to help Mrs. Argyle, whose name is Rachel, with some stuff 18 years ago. We found out that Rachel grew up really rich, and so she spent a lot of her money and time in different charities with children. Yeah, okay, so maybe I should have put this up. This is a little bit all over the place, but I will say it the way I kind of have it now, and then maybe I will put it up later and that will help me orient my thoughts. So there is Gwenda Vaughn. She is Leo's secretary. We talked about her. She's about 37 or 38, and it looked like there was something going on between them, and it sounds like an engagement to Leo is probably going to be announced soon. So I mean, those two could have been in on this together for sure. And then we found, okay, there was also Hester. So far, not much else has been said about her. She's Jack's sister. Someone has called her a passionate figure that gets what she wants. So that's maybe a bit of a red flag. Now there are some other kids. The Argyles had some other kids. They were all adopted, so they couldn't have children, so they were all adopted. One was pre-war and the other ones were after, I think. So we already met Hester. I think the oldest her name is Mary. She is 27, tall and serene. She is married to, where is he? Phil. And Phil, shortly after they were married, he came down with polio and lost the use of his legs. It hasn't said so far how long they've been married, but it did mention that Mary and Phil were in the house the night of the murder. And he, I think, had maybe just had surgery, or maybe he had just been sick and kind of like was in recovery. They've pretty much ruled him out, which makes me suspicious because you can't rule anyone out. I think she was hit in the back of the head with a fireplace poker. So, I mean, you could maybe do that. Like, she was bending over, he could have done that from a wheelchair. Then they have a boy whose name is Michael, who goes by Mickey. He was not at the house the night of the murder, apparently. So the doors were all locked, and either she let someone in or it was someone that was already there. So he's a car salesman in Drymouth. I don't know how far away that is. Maybe he drove in and killed her for some reason and then left. I wouldn't know why. Then they have a daughter named Tina. She has darker skin, so I think they called her a half-caste child. So, but the thing is, once Leo found out that, what's his name? Arthur had come over and found out that Jack was innocent, he phoned Mickey and Mary. They were at the house the night of the murder, but Tina, also another child, he just wrote her a letter, so that was suspicious. She lives in Redmond, I can't even read my own writing, and works as the county librarian. Okay, who else have we met here? Oh yes, and then we found out that Jack had a wife. The family didn't even know about her, and she was remarried a few weeks after his death. She didn't even visit him in prison. She wasn't really torn up over his death or being locked up, really. Oh, and then Hester has a boyfriend, Dr. Donald Craig. She cancelled her date the night that Arthur announced the news. Yeah, so the people in the house November 9th were Leo, Hester, Mary, Phil, Kirsten, Miss Vaughn, and then maybe she let someone in. Okay, I wish I would have organized those a little bit more before this, but maybe this will help me in my processing as I go. That's what I know so far. I'm kind of suspicious of Mary or Phil just because they were there. I wouldn't know why. See, the thing is, she had lots of money, but everyone was kind of like set up to have lots of money as well. So it's not like anyone really benefited from her death. The people that seem to benefit the most are her husband and his girlfriend if they were an item beforehand. And it doesn't really sound like they were. So yeah, I will now work on putting this up on the wall and then read some more and see what I learn. Right now, Arthur has decided that he is going to get to the bottom of this mystery because he thought he was going to be doing the family a service by telling them that their son was innocent, that Jack was innocent. But now he realizes, well, then that means one of them is guilty. And if they are innocent, then they're suspicious of all the other people. And so he's decided to get to the bottom of this. And I don't know where it's really going to go from here in true Agatha Christie form. Okay guys, I have been reading and I have read chapter 13 and I've got some thoughts here. First I have a little bit of a rant about the book and then I'll update on what I know, what I'm thinking, etc. So my biggest rant here is the way Agatha Christie is writing this, and maybe it's just because this is meant to be a story, but there's a couple things that are really bothering me. And as the mother of a child who has been adopted, I'm really not liking this family dynamics. Everyone, there's actually no sense of family. They don't see each other as their own brother, or she wasn't their own mother. And I mean, it sounds like maybe she didn't go about adopting them in the right way. But I don't really like how Agatha Christie's talking about adoption. Even a little bit later we talk to a doctor that I'll talk about, but he talks about how, you know, like living with a family can only get you so far. Your environment can only get you so far. It's really down to your genes, and that's why these kids are kind of all turning out bad, and I'm really not liking that. And then as far as Tina goes, was it Tina? Yes, they keep like emphasizing how she's so dark and she's a half-caste child and all this. And so, like, what year was this one written? Okay, 59. I'm assuming this was fairly common vocabulary for the time, and I'm assuming that means she's like part East Indian. I think it maybe mentioned that her father was East Indian and her mother was white. I'm not sure, but it's just like, okay, we get it. I feel like Tina has done nothing to arouse our suspicion so far, which is kind of suspicious in itself, but I feel like the book is implying that she is suspicious just because of the color of her skin. That's really bothering me. But anyway, now I will go in and tell you what I've got going on here. So at the top I have kind of just my details on what went down on November 9th. These are my suspects: Leo, Mary, Phil, Tina, Mickey, Gwenda, Hester, and Kirsty. Tina and Mickey were not there at the time, but it is still possible that they came without people knowing. And then these are my other characters that we've talked about that are in the book but are not on my suspect list. Oh, we got Mr. Marshall, the lawyer, Maureen, Clegg. She is the wife of she's the widow of Jack. Dr. Donald Craig is dating Hester, and then we've got Arthur Calgary, who kind of made this whole thing come to light. So I have a few sticky notes to add, and then a few like full page information things that I just doggy-eared because I didn't want to write down all the information. So which order should we go to here? Dr. McMaster, he is the doctor of the village. So he saw the kids, Mary, Tina, Mickey, Hester, and Jack, when they were young, when they were sick. Mrs. Argyle went to a doctor in the city because she's rich and she could do that. He told her that the kids were spoiled and needed some neglect, so she needed to like back off a bit. So we met him. Arthur went to talk to him, maybe hoping he could shed some light on things. And then right after Arthur was there, then Dr. Donald Craig came over. So he took over the practice from Dr. McMaster. And he is the guy that is dating Hester. And he admits that he fully believes she could have done it. Not that he has any evidence, but he just feels like with her personality, she could have done it. But he still wants to marry her. He just wants to know if she did it or not. He wants her to tell him, and he's fine with like sweeping it under the rug and all this, and I'm like, okay, interesting. But then Dr. McMaster says, no. Eventually you start thinking, my coffee tastes a little bitter this morning, or oh, that fire poker looks a little heavy, and she would notice you looking at her suspiciously. Yeah, so I kind of cracked up at that part. So those guys are not on my suspects list, but they are on my character list. So when Arthur went to talk to Dr. McMaster, they had a long conversation. And the doctor kind of went over each of the people in the family and household. He really talked a lot about how Rachel Argyle got married, but what her goal was to have kids. And he figures since she didn't physically have children, that desire never left her. Because she just adopted children, then she still poured her life into her kids. She cared about them more than she cared about her husband, but it kind of consumed her. Whereas if she had her own kids, then she would have got over that, is his theory. Okay, yes. So it talks about how she wanted to treat them exactly as though they were hers and Leo's own children. Of course, they weren't hers and Leo's own children. They had entirely different instincts, feelings, aptitudes, and demands. Young Mickey now works as a car salesman. Hester more or less ran away. Mary insisted on marrying a man during the war, whom her mother warned her not to marry. He was brave and intelligent, but an absolute fool when it came to business. Then he got polio. Mickey has always been a young man with a chip on his shoulder. He resented bitterly being abandoned by his own mother. We see that a little bit later on. He actually fantasized about killing her or about her dying. Because he was, as much as his mom was abusive, his bio mom was abusive, he still wanted to be with her. But she sold him to the Argyles for £100. And then there's the Swedish masseuse woman. She didn't like Mrs. Argyle. She was fond of children and fond of Leo. Probably tried to be grateful but couldn't manage it. Still, I hardly think that her feelings of dislike could cause her to hit her benefactor on the head with a poker. And we pretty much see into everyone's minds a little bit. So obviously, somewhere along the way, someone is going to be an unreliable narrator if we're going to see into everyone. Kirsty says, like, she started out liking Mrs. Argyle, but then eventually she did grow to resent her. And from what it says, it doesn't sound like she killed her, but who knows. And then there's Leo, who was in love with Gwenda before Rachel died. That is actually from Leo's perspective. So then they don't talk a lot about, so Hester, they talk a little bit about, they don't talk much about Mickey and Tina because they weren't there. But right where I left off, just barely, the police are back out, going over everything, checking everyone's alibi, checking the like time frame from the night. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is Gwenda. She says she was at the house till 7 or a little after, and then she walked home. And this time she remembered that a car passed her because it splashed her skirt. So that makes me wonder, did one of these people, Tina or Mickey, come drive out? And then there was another thing. Okay, no, maybe that was all. So At this point, I'm not sure what I'm all thinking. Phil Durant, Mary's husband, they're very enthralled by like psychology and everything now. He's analyzing everybody's sociology. He's analyzing them, and that makes me think he probably didn't do it, especially also it sounds like their rooms are on the opposite end of the house as to where Rachel was murdered, and at the time he had just got out of the hospital, so I don't think he could have like wheeled himself down there, killed her, and wheeled himself back. Mary and Phil are both saying they were together the entire time, but Mary actually popped out to the bathroom, and Phil says they should say they were together the whole time, which does make me suspicious of Phil, because she could just say she went to the bathroom. He's making it sound like he's covering for her, but really she's also covering for him. And Mary lies like really well. He says like he's surprised at how naturally the lie comes to her. So this is like the point where you kind of get suspicious of everybody. So Leo and Gwenda definitely were in love before she died, so they're kind of like up there. Hester, we know, is like a passionate woman. And then Tina, so far she seems to be the blandest character. They seem to point to her, like I said before, because of the color of her skin, but nothing else. And they haven't asked, they did ask Mickey where he was, and they asked Tina, and she was just like at her flat by himself. So that's kind of suspicious. Mickey was apparently test driving a vehicle. He's a car salesman. Something was wrong with the car, so he was driving around. So he doesn't really have an alibi either. His house, I think, is 25 minutes from the Argyles. So it's kind of at the point where it could have been any of these people. It could have been someone else as well. Currently, I don't see that there is anyone else that it could be. But I'm not really leaning towards any one person. Kirsty is kind of terrified right now because she thinks the family might point to her, because better for her to take the fall, and she thinks people might think it's better for her to take the fall than one of the family, but the family is not a united family, so it hasn't even crossed their minds really. Yeah, so I'm that far. I think I'm gonna keep reading until kind of like right before the reveal, and then I'll come back and I will share my final thoughts, and then also read the chapter on camera like I did last time, because then I can kind of share my thoughts as I go. Okay, I think this is the second last update. I don't want to read anymore, so I have just finished chapter 20. My next one is 21. There's about 25, 30-ish pages left in the book. So I think this is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to tell you what I've learned recently, and then I'm going to take tonight to think this through a little bit. Tomorrow I'm going to come and read or say my final verdict, and then read the chapters on here. A couple things that we found out though. So we kind of keep flipping back and forth between people a bit. Mickey admitted he was talking about his job as a car salesman and how he's pretty good at it because he is able to do a line of talk. And so I think he's talking about how he can like lie to people to sell cars. It's not what he wants to do forever, but I thought that was interesting. He used to climb out of a window and down a tree and sneak out, according to Hester. And then we found out that Tina's car, which is a bubble car I'd never heard of, it was a red bubble car. I've looked it up, it's an interesting car. Very unique. It was seen the night of the murder, and apparently I used this sticky note upside down. So we'll add this up here. So it's like points against Mickey and Tina. We know that Tina believes Mickey was there that night, so she says. And she was, apparently Tina was the only child that didn't hate Mrs. Argyle, which seems like, oh, she shouldn't be the guilty one. But then Agatha Christie, she always makes like the guilty one the person you don't think, so then I just am suspicious of her because there's no reason to be suspicious. These books really get in my head. And Tina believes Hester is very unhappy, I wrote. So we'll just add this here as well. Yeah. I don't, as of right now, I don't lean really towards anyone. The very last little thing that I read was Dr. Calgary went to go visit some middle-aged woman that Jacko had kind of swindled. He had a habit of getting to middle-aged women and telling them he loved them and then taking their money and running, and then he always kind of like had some little piece of blackmail where they wouldn't squeal. So in some ways that almost makes me wonder if, like, was he playing Kirsty Lindstrom? But I also feel like she could see right through Jack probably, so I'm not sure. I am suspicious of Mary. Her husband Phil is having a lot of fun trying to figure out who the murderer is and like seeing everyone's reactions. If he hadn't been so injured when the murder happened, from my understanding, he could not have physically got to the office or to the place to kill her. I'd be very suspicious of him because he seems overly interested. But then again, I really like murder mysteries, and that doesn't necessarily make someone a murderer. But Mary was gone to the bathroom and he's covering for her, but doesn't seem to suspect her. He's kind of suspicious of everybody else. I don't, at this point, think it's Leo and Gwenda. But, like I said, I'm gonna take tonight, think about this, and then come back, share my final answer before I read the ending. Though I don't feel confident in anything right now. Okay guys, let's just be honest here. I've had 24 hours to think this through and I have no idea who did it or why. And that one's bothering me. Let's take that one down. Those of you that have read this book already, I would like to know in the comments, did you know who did it before the end? I think my biggest thing here is I don't understand well, I don't see a motive for the murder. And my battery's gonna die, so I'm gonna switch that out and then we'll continue this. Okay, full battery. Now I can do this. Okay, yeah, motive for the murder. Normally it would be like money, but I think everyone that is an option is kind of like set up for money. So it's not money. We know that Rachel was very controlling, so maybe it's someone that she was trying to control their life a little too much, and then getting rid of her would be a good thing. So I know Hester felt like her mom was controlling but was also always right, and that was kind of annoying. I do wonder about Mary because her mom was really pressuring her and Phil to live in their house, and Mary didn't want to and Phil was okay with it, but once Rachel was dead, then they went and lived on their own. I feel like she could probably do it, so I'm kind of leaning towards Mary. Tina's car was seen there, and I don't see any reason why she would have done it. She's seems to be the only one that really liked Rachel, which just makes me suspicious because these books make me like try to think about suspecting the least likely person. Mickey was maybe seen there and he admitted, or at least admitted in the book, to like wanting to kill her when he was younger. And I feel like he's too obvious, so I feel like it might not be him. Yeah, so I think Tina saw him there, but she hasn't told anyone that. And then Kirsty, I don't know why she would do it. Gwenda and Leo, maybe for their love thing. But what I don't understand is Rachel's been dead for 2 years. And Jacko went away for the murder. And they still didn't get married. Whereas I could see if there was still suspicions they wouldn't get married. But Jacko's was blamed for it, and so they should have just got married earlier. So I kind of think it's not them. I don't know if that makes sense as to why I think that. And I don't think it's Phil. I would like it to be Phil, but I don't think it is, because from what I understand, he could not have physically done it. So my highest suspect is actually Mary. She went to the bathroom. She has no alibi. I wonder if her husband knows it was her. I think that where I had left off, it sounds like Kirsty knows who it is, or does she know, or does she just think she knows? Hester seems to think that Kirsty thinks it was her. And Phil thinks that Kirsty knows who it was. I don't know, you guys. My final verdict is just going to be Mary, because she didn't want to live with her mom. She wanted to live with Phil. That's my final verdict. Now I have, try not to see I have like 35 pages to read. So I'm going to read that on camera, and then we'll see if I'm right or my thoughts afterwards. Oh, and while I read this, I have 2 kisses here that I'm going to eat because Christmas time, chocolate. Okay, so we flipped to Phil and Mary. And Mary just said, "You don't know anything about me," to him. He started to rebut that, but paused. It came to him with something of a shock that perhaps he didn't know very much about Mary. Maybe I'm right. Mary really wants Phil to drop it, and he says no, it has to be cleared up because Hester's gonna throw herself out of the windows, Kirsty's having a nervous breakdown, Leo's already freezing, and Gwenda, she's on the point of accepting a post in a different place, and so he's thinking about everyone else, but he's not thinking about Mary. I'm suspicious. Okay, here's a little revelation. Tina is admitting to Mickey that she was there that night, which we kind of know about. She was gonna go talk to her mom about changing jobs, and she heard someone whispering in the trees between 7 and 7:30. That's the time. Now remember that and don't make a muck of it. Between 7 and 7:30. Don't know who that is yet. I think, yeah, so this is like in the tree somewhere. She doesn't know if it's a man or a woman. So she's worried that it's her dad and Gwenda. And that's why she hasn't said anything, maybe? Or Hester and someone. It could have been Mary, but not Philip. Not Philip, of course. That makes me so suspicious of Philip. But, okay, so, Kirsten was just going in to give Philip his tea, and Tina came because she was supposed to be meeting Philip, and Philip has been killed. Obviously, he knew too much. I don't know. I still suspect Mary. Wait, what? Okay, so that... The doctor came to the door to... I'm so confused by what happened, just barely. Was it the doctor that came to the door? No, Mickey came to the door. And Tina fainted on him before she could tell him that Philip was stabbed. And the doctor goes up to check Tina since she fainted and says that girl didn't faint, she was stabbed in the back. And they need to get her to the hospital at once. What? This is a very scary house to be in. Apparently they have found the knife that stabbed Tina and Philip, and it was in Mickey's pocket, but I'm not sure. That seems a little too tidy. Oh, okay. So, we don't have the final results yet, but Tina woke up and said Mickey, because she wanted to, well, right now they think that means she suspects Mickey, but she said the cup was empty, and Kirsten was coming out of the room pretending she was going in, but she was coming out because she was cleaning the tray up. And then she said the dove on the mast, and I think that has to do with a song that Kirsten used to sing to Mickey and Tina. So Kirsten is the guilty one? Okay, maybe. I'm not sure why though. I think they're about to reveal it, and I still want it to be Mary. I think she makes the most sense. I don't know why Kirsty would. Ooh, okay. Okay. So Jacko convinced Kirsty to do it, so he had a tight alibi. Is that what's going on here? Okay, so this goes to the middle-aged woman thing, which makes sense. So he wooed Kirsty and got her to kill his mom. I mean, I saw the seeds of that, but for her to actually commit murder is pretty intense. And then to keep going even after Jacko is dead. And okay, yep, so it looks like it was Kirsty. She had stabbed Philip, was coming out when she met Tina, so then she pretended she was going in, and then she stabbed Tina, and Tina in her shock didn't realize it till later, and yeah, she killed Rachel. Okay. It's not the final verdict I had locked in, but it is something I had thought of earlier, so I don't feel terrible about that. I have a couple more pages to read here. 2 more pages. We'll see what this says. Okay. I don't feel like that was a like big jaw-dropping moment like Peril at End House. Was Peril? Peril at End House is not one of Agatha Christie's favorites, but this one is. Okay, I can see some of the seeds that were dropped. I'm not sure if you can hear my son and his friend. They're playing video games and they're being loud, but whatever. They're having fun. I'm having fun reading this and realizing that once again, I didn't officially solve it, although I was suspicious and did connect the dots earlier, but then didn't stick with my original thought. So that's my own fault. But I can see how this one happened. With Peril at End House, I feel like I still had questions afterwards that weren't answered. And I do feel like this kind of sums things up a bit more. I feel like there's less loose ends. So Kirsty had a thing for Jack. So she went and stole the money, killed Rachel, and then realized when his wife showed up after he'd been arrested that she had been played big time. And yeah, and then she realized how wicked he was. That was her word. Yeah, and then she just kept killing people so she wouldn't be found out, but that ended up making her the most suspicious. Okay. I still kind of wish it would have been Mary, just because she seemed to have no emotions, so I don't know if she would have even cared to have been arrested, but I guess that makes sense. So there we go. That is Ordeal by Innocence. I do plan on doing this on a regular basis. I'm thinking approximately every other month I'm going to pick out one of my unread Agatha Christie books, of which, you know, I've ordered more now, and do this on camera. And one of these days I will lock in the correct answer. Maybe. We will see. Follow along and see. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know which book I should do next. I've had quite a few people mention some that I've already read, so I'm not going to do those. Next up, I think on my list is Crooked House. I just ordered that one from Book Outlet, assuming they had enough in stock, and it actually arrives to me. Those boys are loud. Then I will probably do that one next, but leave me some of your favorites in the comments, and then I'll try to get to those soon. So thanks for following along and watching me struggle to try to solve this mystery.